Apart from the leaves crunching underfoot, the forest was silent. The earth was rich and damp, and the fecund smell of it filled Siobhan's nose like a blessing. Despite the early morning chill, she felt warm and safe. They were out there for a reason. She knew that. There was game to hunt and mouths at home to feed. But she didn't care. She just wanted to feel peaceful. But Kira obviously didn't feel the same way. "Shiv," she whined. "I don't like it out here. Mother says this part of the forest is haunted and we should stay away. The Witch of the Woods lives here and she feasts on children who get lost. Why have we come this far out?" Her eyes were large and pleading as she looked over at her sister. "Hush, Kira," Siobhan growled. "There are mouths to feed at home, and the game is best deep in the forest. There's no need to be frightened of some old wives' tales." She tried her best to look strong and sure, but the truth was that she didn't know why she was so determined to be out here. It was true, no one came this far. But it was also true that this far out, the forest was teeming with life, and their family was hungry. They continued to walk. Siobhan could hear Sira's trembling breaths with every step, but the deeper they moved between the trees, the calmer she felt. Something here just felt natural, like she belonged. At home, she never felt like she belonged. The other children liked to make fun of her for her ratty clothes and poor family. Teachers at school always told her she'd never amount to anything. And at home she was told what she was obligated to do, and nothing else. Take care of your brothers and sisters. Take care of us. Provide for your family. Love your family. Love your God. What had God ever done for her, apart from give her an endless list of obligations that it was impossible to live up to, and parents who would beat her black and blue every time she fell short? She was of age now, and Siobhan knew that it was only a matter of days before her family would sell her off to some man, one who would undoubtedly also beat her black and blue for his own failings. The thought of it made her stomach turn. She had already seen enough of the evil men could make for one young lifetime. "Siobhan!" Kira screamed, breaking her train of thought. She was pointing at something in the distance. Shiv furrowed her brow and tried to make out what her sister was looking at. It was an old, thick tree stump, sitting among its living peers. It looked like it had sat there for centuries. On the tree stump, there was the fresh corpse of a rabbit. Blood trickled from its mouth and its eyes sat open, wide and uncomprehending. Its face was a twisted mask of fear, but it still made Siobhan feel whole. Symbols were carved into the dead wood of the stump and traced with its blood. It looked like dark magic. "We need to go!" Kira shouted, clutching at her sister's arm. "This place is cursed!" But Siobhan already felt like she was in a daze. That peaceful, heavy feeling had taken her heart in its fist and was weighing her down. Her limbs felt thick and heavy. Kira pulled her back, using all her childlike might, and eventually Siobhan turned. When they saw what was behind them, Kira screamed. It was a shack. Nothing intimidating, just a small shack, nestled among the trees, made of a dark wood marked with ash. Around the clearing were fence posts, and from each fence post hung the headless body of a small deer. They were strung up by their necks, one after the other, ringing the home in a protective circle. Siobhan looked closer and saw more mystical carvings in the fence posts that held up the deer. She felt a rumble of hunger work its way through her. Sira was crying in earnest now, clutching at her sister anywhere she could reach, and stumbling out chalked sobs of words like home and leave and please. Siobhan was too entranced by the beautiful sight before her, though. She couldn't look down at her sister. "Hush, Kira," she whispered, although the sound was drowned out by her sister's wails. Without warning, the sound of her sister's cries was gone, as was the feeling of her small hands tugging on Siobhan's sleeve. In fact, there was no sound in the forest, not the whistling of the wind or the rustle of the trees, nothing. In the vastness of the silence, Siobhan felt her mind unfold. "Welcome, child." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Siobhan whipped around to check behind her. There was a woman there. Well, sort of a woman. She was so much more than that, but not in a way that Siobhan could put into words. Her skin was ashen pale, and her lips were blood red. Her hair fell long in lank blonde clumps, framing her face. Her fingers were red, as if they had been dipped in blood, and the color spread up her skin towards her arms. She wore a long white dress that dragged along the earth, where the tips of her toes hovered just above its surface. And her eyes. Her eyes were dark and cruel and hungry. Siobhan couldn't stop looking at them. "Who are you?" she asked, in a daze. An answer sounded inside her mind. "I am the deer Gdu. I was punished by being sold to a cruel man, so I killed him. And now I find others and help them escape the same fate." Siobhan frowned as she tried to grasp the meaning of the woman. Her hair rippled with the breeze, but there was still no sound other than the woman's voice and Siobhan's own harsh, panting breath. "But I'm not being sold to a man?" She flinched at the hesitance in her own voice. "Not that you know, but he waits for you when you return. He has paid your parents and plans to take you into his own possession. He's vicious. I can smell his hunger and selfishness from here." Siobhan tried to parse out what was really happening. "Do you want to marry him?" The witch's impassive face stared her down. No, I don't." Siobhan had no choice but to answer truthfully. "Then come with me." "Where's my sister?" Her mind snapped back to reality enough to remember that Kiara had just been there a moment before. "I sent her back to the forest's edge. She'll make it home safe." "Then why me?" Siobhan felt a prickle of disobedience moving through her. Just because this stranger looked like a demon didn't make her like being told what to do any more than usual. The witch cocked her head to the side in a bird-like gesture. "Because you want it. Come." The woman moved, gliding slowly over the earth, and past Siobhan without a sideways glance. She moved closer and closer to the hut before passing through the open doorway and disappearing from Siobhan's sight. She was powerless to do anything other than follow the witch. Her feet moved forward, one step at a time, and silence still lay thick around her. She passed the deer carcasses as they swung in the breeze and approached the crumbling hut. The door stood ajar, and the inside was swathed in shadows. Siobhan took a deep breath, steeled herself, and stepped into the darkness. Inside the hut, the witch, Dear Gdu, stood tall over a large table. It was made of thick, sturdy wood, and looked older than Siobhan was. On the table there was a man. He was laying, spread-eagled, his wrists and ankles bound to each corner of the table. There was a gag in his mouth, and his eyes were wide with terror. "Who is he?" Siobhan whispered, entranced. "Exactly who you expect him to be. A disgusting waste of air." The tension mounted as both Siobhan and the witch ignored the man and stared at each other. "Kill him," the witch spoke after too long. "Eat his heart. Take his power and use it for yourself." There was a moment, just a moment, where Siobhan stepped outside of herself and wondered what she was doing. But the thought of what she had to go back to made that moment swiftly come to an end. She was more than just a provider for her parents' other children. She was more than just cattle to be sold off to a husband at any price. She had always felt like she was destined for something amazing. With this thought in the forefront of her mind, and the tingle of excitement thrumming through her body, Siobhan stepped forward. There was a knife laying on the table next to the man. She picked it up and watched as his eyes grew wider still and he began to struggle. A rush of power ran through her at the sight. Look who was the frightened maid now. It took less effort than she expected to bring the blade down and thrust it into his chest. She had to hack through flesh and bone, and she ended up with a warm splatter of blood coating her face and arms as she worked. But she was fueled by hunger. There was a gnawing hunger inside her that only he could sate. The witch watched all this with a proud glint in her eye. The man's heart tore free from his chest with a harsh, wet sound. It sat in Siobhan's hand, still hot and twitching. She took a moment to look at it. "Go on, child. Go on." Her teeth sunk into the tough, salty muscle. It was hard to chew, but every splash of blood down her chin made her feel 100 times stronger and more focused than she ever had in her life. Minutes or hours later, who knows which one, and the heart was gone. Her skin glowed white. Power caressed every inch of her body. "How do you feel?" Siobhan turned and looked the witch in the eye. "Strong?" That one word made the witch's impassive expression break, and a wide, feral grin took over her face. Siobhan answered it with a matching grin. Blood continued to trickle down her chin. "Good. We have work to do."